I finished The Way of Edan, book one of the Edan trilogy by my YouTube friend Philip Chase, and I want to talk to you about it. It is always hard to review and read a book by someone that you know, and so I will say right here off the bat that one of the most positive things that I can say very quickly about this book is that quickly I stopped thinking about, okay, this is Philip Chase's book, and reading it maybe critically or whatever, and just got into the story and enjoyed, and I read it as a book, which I think is a huge victory as someone who's a self-published author and who has a voice here on BookTube. The book is this very fun blend of Anglo-Saxon, Viking lore feel, even in some of the names and the weapons that are being used and how the towns are organized, while also being broadly European, but also having this very strong, especially in the magic of the world and the magic of Edan, and how the main character who interacts in the magic experiences it is very sort of Eastern and Buddhist, specifically on connecting to the world and the life around us, and this idea of the infinite and the eternal. Not overly done, but I think done very, very well, and actually reminded me of one of my favorite reads of the past couple of years, which is The Moontide Quartet by David Hare. And I think one of the great ways that Chase sort of gets rid of the self-published friend tag very quickly is often those books take it safe, particularly in the beginning chapters of a story, and Chase does the exact opposite. In fact, in the first couple of chapters, he deceives the reader in some pretty major ways that I think people could react poorly to, but I thought was this very interesting storytelling technique and really set the tone for the rest of the novels that I enjoyed. With that said, the actual genre, as far as within the fantasy genre, is probably more classical fantasy than sort of more modern fantasy or dark fantasy, which I actually appreciate. The stakes are really well defined. Chase is not afraid to kill off characters or secondary characters or have his main characters hurt or maimed in permanent ways. That I think is quite good, and he does that from the beginning. Chase's prose is good, is creative. There are some really amazing descriptions of towns and scenery specifically. One area where I think it's maybe has some room to develop is in the battle scenes, but to be quite frank, I don't normally like battle scenes in most books, so that might just be a personal preference thing, but there were a couple battles where I was like, okay, we can get to the end of this. I want to, get to see what happens. I don't need to hear about every spear or person who's fallen in battle. I am super excited to get to books 2 and 3, and I'm going to do that pretty quickly as soon as I can with other commitments that I have made. Two broad criticisms that would keep this from being an all-time great for me personally. First is a small quibble, but there's one event that happens that really shifts the quests of the main characters. The main characters are going to do something, and then something happens to them, so they can't do that and have to really redirect, and it has a major impact on the book. And the actual inciting incident that happens there felt to me a little too coincidental, a little too random, a little too small, that turned rather large, and it really kind of took me out of the story for about 50 pages as I was like, okay, is this going to be a small thing, or okay, this is now a thing? Oh, this is really now a thing? Overall, I like the idea that this quest was changed from what it was, but the way that it happened was not my favorite. The second larger thing is I do think this book is caught between two different kinds of styles of world building. The classical, very slow, deliberate, sort of Tolkien-esque world building that I know from his channel Philip Chase really likes, where the first 200 pages of Fellowship of the Ring, you don't really leave the Shire, but you hear a lot about the world, you hear a lot about the elves in these small encounters that aren't really pushing the plot forward, but really immerse you in the world. I think at times Philip Chase wants to do that, but I think also he's feeling the pull of the second kind of world building, modern world building, kind of Sanderson-esque, where you have to keep going, a propulsive plot, and as you're going, you'll fill in the details of the world as it is necessary for those things that are happening in the moment. And so sometimes that comes across as a lot of lore dropping. There's a couple times where just someone will sit down and tell you a story, and it's this long story with a lot of names and a lot of background, and those parts didn't particularly work for me. And I think it would have been better to spread out that lore in a slower process rather than in these large dumps. Those two small critiques maybe kept it from being elevated to some of my best all time to being something that I would strongly recommend people to check out. And I'm so happy that I'm able to give this positive review for a friend's book. So